So hello and welcome back to a brand new Reddit video on the channel, and today is the 5th installment of the daily series of r/entitled parents. So let's get into it. Entitled mum tells sick daughter she just needs to get over being sick. Hey all, I'm just going to preface this by saying I've never had the best immune system. I had scurvy as a baby and sepsis as a toddler, so it wasn't uncommon for me to have colds that lasted over a month. Everyone in my family knew this, but stories like the one I'm about to tell you still happened routinely. This story happened when I was a teenager. I had caught the flu, and if you've ever had flu before, you know it is way worse than a cold. The body gets so weak that you can hardly move, and a fever that, if left unchecked, could have catastrophic results. Knowing this, I grabbed a big bottle of NyQuil, a big cup of water with a straw, and parked myself on the living room recliner so that my condition could be monitored, or at the very least, couldn't be ignored. All that effort took everything I had out of me. For 2 straight weeks, I would take a dose of NyQuil, wash it down with enough fluids to get the taste out of my mouth, and fall asleep for about 6 hours, rinse and repeat. I was a mess. My fever would not go down and I could barely move. I don't remember eating anything for that whole time either. So I was probably malnourished too. Despite all this, my mum and her husband were getting more and more irritated with me for laying around all day. So my mum confronted me in one of my few moments of consciousness. "Alright, sweetie," she said. "I know you don't feel very well right now, but you've just got to get better. You're not doing yourself any favours." "I'm trying," I replied, trying not to pass out. My mum was a nurse, but rarely took me or my siblings to hospital. She also tended to overlook illness. Like, you could have a fever and still be expected to make a big pot of chicken soup from scratch for the whole household. "Go take a bath and make yourself some tea," she told me. "I'll go get you some Gatorade and hopefully you'll feel better by tomorrow. And I don't want to see you on that recliner when I get back. If you're going to sleep all day, do it in your room." I took another 2 weeks to get well enough to stand without feeling dizzy. I never did go to a hospital or take anything stronger than over-the-counter meds. My mum also kept me to keep doing things around the house like dishes and laundry. So this story was on the mild side. I just needed to vent, I guess. Kicked from a restaurant because entitled kid is annoying everyone. I've posted a story about my entitled cousins here before, where they nearly broke my PC, though last time I didn't explain something. The entitled kid's mum never takes care of them. She leaves them with her friends and leaves them with other people. And when she does see them, she treats them like entitled brats, so they have turned into entitled little goblins that expect everything they want, because of my grandparents spoiling them. Cast: me. Entitled kid: 3 of them, 6, 11 and 14. Entitled mum: brother, mine, and my grandparents. We usually meet at a specific restaurant for my grandparents' birthday. This restaurant is not the same as the one we usually go to. We usually go to a restaurant owned by one of my grandparents' friends, so they give us a big table in the back where we can eat alone. But that restaurant was closed for renovations, so in this occasion we had to go to a new one. In this restaurant we sat in the middle of the dining hall surrounded by people. When we sat down, the youngest entitled kid started begging his mother for her phone, very loudly, and she gave it after complaining to him to shut up. Then the middle entitled kid got jealous and started screaming and complaining for the phone. Meanwhile, the oldest entitled kid was on her phone listening to music. When the other entitled kids noticed this, they started complaining, as the mum had taken the phone away from them, so they didn't complain. Me and my brother were playing on our phones to pass the time. We are used to them asking for our phones, so when we tried to ignore them and wait for the food quietly, this worked. And when the food came, we all took our phones away and they started eating. We were eating typical Spanish food: the paella, a yellow or orange rice used with fish or rabbit to flavour, and, as is usual, they started complaining about the food and how bad it was in front of the waiters. These seemed offensive, so they started talking in the distance. My family was getting mad at this, but they insisted on having a coffee after they finished eating and staying at our table. We do this in my grandparents' friend's restaurant, as they don't really use that table for much. But this restaurant had a queue to eat, so we were asked for leave. My family understood this, and we got ready and started to pay and leave. So did my grandparents, but the entitled mum and the entitled kids got mad at them for ruining their talk. So they started complaining to the waiters and trying to get them to leave us alone. While all of this was happening, the 2 younger entitled kids were arguing about the phone, and they were getting loud. so we were asked to leave several times. I got all my stuff to leave, and eventually we were kicked out. Then they insisted that they got to go to the beach with us. Luckily, I could just go very deep where they can't be and be alone without them. Now for our last story of the day, entitled Mum Makes Me Miss My Flight. This happened a few years ago and I had a vivid flashback of it while walking home the other day. I moved to New York City when I was 18 but visited home quite often to see my little brother. My parents are divorced. I'd always ask my dad to drive me and pick me up from the airport. It's about a 45-minute drive. I'd almost always take the cheapest flights, which are usually the red eyes. I don't know what that is. So I've always really appreciated and made it clear with verbal thanks and small gifts for my dad. He's just always glad to see me, to be honest, and we sort of cry and hug at the drop-off gate, lol. My mum noticed this about 2 years in and started to get super huffy. Why don't you ever ask me to take you to the airport? I don't understand why you'd want to spend 45 minutes in a car with him, stuff like that. But if I knew I did, she'd make a huge deal out of it. Plus, she's super unreliable. Years pass and I have an afternoon flight back to NYC. I finally let my mother drive me to the airport. My dad have to work anyway, so it should be fine, right? Wrong. First, my mother demands my little brother come as well, so she doesn't have to drive back alone. He doesn't mind and would have come anyway, but still, the energy's already bad. Then she decides we're going to go and eat at the only restaurant in about 3 counties that serves pho. I'm going to say pho. That serves pho. Okay, great. I don't mind when it's near the airport, but I expressed many times that we need to leave early to do lunch and make my flight. The day of the flight, she's an hour late to grab my brother and I. I expressed that we probably won't have time to make my flight and lunch, and that she and my brother should grab it after dropping me off. She is furious, rolls her eyes, calls me a nervous Nelly, demands I go to lunch. The place is packed busy. They tell us at the door that food will take a while. I ask the lady if they can place an order and pick it up in 30 minutes, but my mum marches off to a dirty table and sits down, gesturing that the poor host is cleaning it up. My brother and I are mortified, but the lady told us it's okay and that we should go and sit. Boarding starts in 15 minutes. I show my mum my boarding pass and the text alert that the flight is there. I pull up the Uber app to see if Uber even exists in this rural area. It doesn't. My brother is trying his best to encourage that we leave, but she obviously refuses. The whole restaurant watches as my mum yells at me and dresses me down, screaming about how I'm ungrateful, how I'm lucky that she even offered to drive me to the airport and pay for my food. She gets more and more worried as I just stop responding, how I'll die alone and never have kids. Worked up. Then she starts talking about confidential medical information that to this day I do not know how she found out. I tried to de-escalate so many times, but she had decided that this had to be everyone's problem. At this point I could tell I was going to miss my flight. I didn't have the energy to care and I was reeling from the hateful things she was saying. I stepped out to call the airline and change my flights. Our waitress stepped out after and let me know that they were rushing out the order. The whole staff was really kind, considering how terrible it all was. When I came back in, my brother was basically slumped down in his chair and my mum was on her phone telling my uncle about how ungrateful I was. The food was there, but obviously I didn't want to eat. The waitress grabbed the check right away and left it at the table with to-go containers. But my mum got really mad at that even. She was like, "Don't try and accommodate this girl. Look, she won't even eat your food. She thinks she's too good for it." And then she ordered more food. She asked for them to pack up 4 extra servings so that she could take it home to my stepdad and sister's family. We sat there as she ate, my brother Snapchatting me under the table, trying to cheer me up. By the time the food for my stepfamily arrived, our flight had already departed. She went up to pay and I left a $40 tip on the table for our server. She stayed on the phone the rest of the entire way, and while my brother helped me grab my bag, she rolled down the window and yelled at him to hurry up. He asked if he could walk me to security, but my mum just sneered and said, "She's already missed our flight. We need to hurry home and take this food to everyone." I just gave him a big hug and told him not to worry. I got the next flight, tried my best not to cry while waiting. Anyway, it took a while, but we're no contact now. Looking back, it's such an insane thing to do, but at the time I really did doubt myself. So anyway, thank you for watching. Please do not forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. This is r/entitled parents episode 5, and tomorrow I'll be uploading a new style of videos, reaction videos, but obviously with no face cam because I don't want to do a face reveal yet. So I'll be uploading them, and I can promise a daily video, but I will try to sometimes get 2 videos a day out. So you will get at least 10 videos a week. Thank you, subscribe, comment, like, share, and goodbye for now. See you tomorrow.